I bought large cuts of beef and pork and a whole chicken from my local butcher. I'll show you how I butcher and prepare meat and give you 9 easy recipes you can cook at home.
This isn't a video to slag off supermarkets, to be honest. I use a supermarket all the time. I will always order like a whole thing, either from my butcher or from a supermarket. I'll use it to make 3 meals rather than just buying like one thing from the supermarket. Okay, so these fillet steaks are £12.50. Let's have a look. So like you get with all these vat pack meats, super thin. There's nothing, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just a thin steak, good for a midweek meal. So £12.50, and then this big old fillet cost us 80 quid for 2,400 grams. Okay, so when you've got a fillet like this, you've got 3 different sections. The fillet tail, which we're going to use for tartare, the centre cut, which we're going to use for some little mini Wellingtons, and then you've got lots of other steaks here that you can use to make a midweek meal. Well, first of all, how to prep this is you just take this chain off. There's good meat in there, but it's also got quite a lot of sinew. Comes off in one go. Super easy to take off. At this point, I'll always take the fillets, the fillet tail off. This is called the silver skin. So to remove that, you just put your knife underneath and just go up nicely like this. Silver skin's just a little bit tough. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it, to be honest. If you like a bit of chew, you can easily eat it. This is the only sort of prep that you need to do for a fillet. Okay, so this is the center cut. We're gonna cut a few big steaks out of it, and this will be for our special occasion individual beef wellies. Super easy to make at home, and we've just made it a really simple recipe for you to follow, so you could do this for a dinner party. So we've got those center cut fillets. Just season them all over. So what we've got is we've got our herb pancakes, we've got some blanched spinach, we've got duxelle and our pastry. Previously done a video about all about beef Wellington, and all of these elements can be found on there. Meat is seared all over, but still completely raw. We seared that meat for about 2.5 to 3 minutes. To build our individual Wellingtons, what we're gonna do is start with our herb pancake, super easy to make. I'm using this little pan, but you can use any sort of mold that you've got. This is just a good shape for it. You could use a little tart case or a little dariole mold or something like that, and then just lay it in there. So this spinach has just been blanched. If you want to omit this step, you can. Blanch for like literally just to take the rawness off it. So then we go with our duxelle, and then just place the duxelle in the bottom and nicely press it down. So this is what's going to give the shape to the Wellington. Now, we're calling this a Wellington. Traditionally in France, it's actually more of a petit. Take your fillet, brush all over with Dijon, and then final layer of Parma ham. So this is just going to protect that beef, and it also adds a beautiful, delicious flavour. The benefit to using this pan is that I can get a really nice shape when I place that in. Small amount of pancake on top, and then fold in any trim or excess. And pushing it really far down at this stage as well will give you a more sort of perfect finished cut through puff pastry. So just buy some puff pastry from the shops, demold your Wellington. That's a perfect little shape, little parcel. Taking that cling film off, lay it down with nothing coming out the outside. Cut a nice big shape out of it, a nice big circle on the bottom. Probably double the size of covering again. Egg wash on the outside. Pastry goes over the top. Then you quite firmly press and then angle it round, pushing in your little fingers all the way around until you get a complete coverage with no little gap. Go around with a nice sharp knife. I just think individual Wellingtons are a bit more decadent. You can cut these into halves as well. So it'd be like 2 per portion. So just lightly scoring without putting much weight on the knife at all the way down your petit, and then egg wash. 200 degrees for 12 minutes. Yeah, so we want to probe it to about 48 degrees. This is our Wellington, fully rested now. Beautiful layer of pancake, beautiful layer of spinach, mushroom duxelle, and then this perfectly cooked fillet. Obviously you can cook this on a little bit if you want to, and then sauce on the plate. If this was Jamie Oliver, you'd have a family full of people eating this at the table, but I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna eat it myself. You'll be the talk of the town with this meal. And then what we're left with here is what we call in the UK a Chateaubriand, but it's different names in different places. So at home, I wouldn't leave this as a chateau unless I've got a special occasion. But I just trim that down, right down the middle. So I'm just trim that tiny little bit of end off. And then I've got 1, 2. This is one more nice steak with a slightly different muscle structure, this one, but still good enough to eat as a steak. And then last one, probably use this one as well. An absolute 70s classic, steak Diane. This is a really easy meal. It can all come together in about 20 minutes. So steak in. We'll do all the prep whilst we're cooking the steak and letting it rest. Diane sauce isn't actually one of the classic sauces. It was a kind of invention in the 1930s. All I know is it follows a very similar format to a lot of other pan sauce dishes. You get a nice amount of flavour, deglaze with a bit of brandy. So just flip your steaks halfway, they should have a nice crust on them. Mushrooms, we're going to leave them quite chunky. Actually going to cook the steaks pretty much the whole way in the pan. So once you've got a nice crust, you can turn the heat down slightly. Knob of butter in there. And the butter's really important because that's actually going to be the start of our pan sauce. Tarragon just rolled up neatly into a ball, and then chiffonade. Got a little bit of beef stock here. You could use a beef stock cube if you want. Creme fraiche, kind of like the main point of difference between almost like a peppercorn is the use of creme fraiche rather than double cream. Add in a little bit of thyme. They've had about 4 minutes each side. We're looking for a nice medium rare steak. I mean, I actually eat my fillets probably on the rarer side. They'll be resting for around about 10 minutes. And then what the shallots does is it basically gets rid of what we call fond. So you can see it instantly gets that colour. Fond is this scrapey bit at the bottom of the pan. When you're adding your shallots, use them to deglaze the bottom of the pan. Add our mushrooms in. Little colour on the mushrooms, not too much. Small bit of butter. That'll just stop the shallots and the mushrooms from burning. It just lowers the temperature of the pan. As the butter solids caramelise, it will help the vegetables brown quicker. Once you've got a little bit of colour on the shallots and the mushrooms, we can deglaze. I've got brandy here. Feel free to use Madeira. Anything you might have lying around in your alcohol cupboard. Brandy really for me is the only thing, it's not like I'm sitting at home and having a brandy every now and then. The only thing I use it is for cooking, and I think people don't really understand why they use brandy in sauces, but essentially once that all evaporates, you're just left with a load of sweetness. To be clear, the act of setting it on fire is purely chef wankery. You can just reduce it. It does exactly the same thing. So that's our stock going in. Add our creme fraiche in. Not too much creme fraiche. Start to add all your other ingredients to finish the sauce. So Dijon mustard just went in. Tarragon's going to go in now. So that's the finished sauce. It's a really beautiful, simple pan sauce. Last but not least, splash of Lea & Perrins, good hit of black pepper. This is mash. If you want the recipe for mash, follow the link. And then Dijon sauce goes on. Lay the steak on. Over that mash. A few little buttered carrots. Such a banging, quick and easy. Yeah, less than 20 minutes. Boom. Midweek meal, steak Diane. Serve this with any side you want. There's actually a good amount of usable meat on the chain, and it's very commonly something that people kind of in restaurants just chuck into the sauce pot. 2 little bits of meat on the chain. And I really do think it's got probably some of the best texture on the whole fillet. You can take your knife, just trim this down all the way, and then you get yourself another portion. There's a big difference between butchery and fish prep, I always think. I think fish prep is like, it's more, definitely feels like more of an art form. Like, and if you slip up, you've pretty much screwed it up. And you can always tell when someone's prepped a fish badly. Meat's a lot more forgiving. So this is what I'd use for tartare. This can equally be used in tartare. This is my favorite way to use the waste. So I've got my fillet tail here, which has been in the freezer. And then it's always best, this is a proper hack, to cut your beef for tartare from the freezer, because you get a perfect shape. So just taking it down, bacteria stops growing in the freezer. So it's the safest way to store meat. Typically sushi, anything that you eat that's raw in the UK has been frozen at some point. So, and this is no exception with tartare. So it helps bacteria slow down, but also it gives you the perfect slice. I can't really think of a better way, to be quite honest, of using beef trim than making a really good sort of classic French tartare. I think there's more and more people that seem to be eating raw beef at the moment for health reasons. And to be honest, French have been doing it for years. For me, this is the best way to use the fillet, any sort of fillet trim. And you can see that the tail's not like, it's not completely lean. There's little bits of fat that sort of coat around it. And all of that's good into a tartare for me anyway. And I just lay it in one single layer on a tray, one nice banana shallot. So what I'm gonna do is just do a light brunoise, and then I'm gonna go directly into a little sieve. For me, I really like to rinse my shallots. It's something that you do a lot in fine dining restaurants, but it's a really good little hack to do at home. Give them a quick rinse. So this just takes off some of the intense onion flavour. I always do a good hit of Worcestershire sauce, 7 or 8 splashes. Necessary ingredient, Tabasco. Whole grain mustard for heat. Yeah, I mean, this is all kind of stuff that you'd have in your cupboard. I had a splash of white wine vinegar. Whisk a little bit of good quality olive oil into there. The mustard will act as an emulsifier. Tiny little bit of parsley, homemade crisps, or just some crisps you can get from the shop. So this oil's on about 180. They've just been rinsed, these potatoes, and sliced nice and fine. Use a knife or use a mandolin. Add in your beef, so it's fully defrosted now. Still just probably just a little bit chilled, like a little bit cold, and ideally you want to eat a tartare at, you know, you definitely don't want it to be warm, or but maybe just below room temperature. Liberally spoon over your dressing. We're going to taste it before we adjust the seasoning, and then we might add a splash of soy sauce at the end. But this is the perfect thing. Maybe this is the perfect starter for your for a dinner party. Tartare is one of those things. It got a reputation of being a hyper chefy thing to do, and I really do believe it is the perfect dinner party starter, or to be honest, just nice light snack. Got some crisps. They can just be shop bought. Got one raw egg yolk. Super simple. If you've never made tartare at home, give this a go. And you can be really flexible about the dressing as well. So on average, people eat about 200 to 300 grams of meat per portion. And what that looks like in terms of this, for much better quality meat, £6.50 per 200 grams versus £10.60 per 200 grams. So it's a massive saving of almost 40% on the much better free-range, dry-aged fillet beef. So with freezing meat, really simple. Choose yourself a Tupperware container. Just pack it in nice and tightly. I always just use a lidded container like this, and that'll stop it from getting freezer burnt. If meat is exposed to the freezer, it won't stay in really good quality. Vacuum's obviously the best, but this essentially is perfect for freezing meat. Just a lidded Tupperware container. Okay, chickens. Beautiful free-range bird here, at least 56 days old, so you know it's good quality. That is £12 a bird, which means that per 200 grams serving of meat, £1.80. This, on the other hand, huge. It says 2 breast fillets. Cheeky blighters, it's only 1. They've just chopped it in half, and it's absolutely massive. You know, this is a barn raised, so pretty much the lowest welfare. It says Tesco welfare approved. God knows what that actually means, but these will be barn raised chickens rather than free range. So not the same quality, but you can see just how big that breast is, you know? It's actually a freak of nature. The quality of this meat is nowhere near gonna be as good as this. Same with the bone, same with the skin, same with the carcass. And the worst thing about fillets is they take the skin off, which is a natural barrier when you cook it. This costs us £3.30, which means that it's roughly about £2.30 per 200 gram serving. So it's not a massive saving, but definitely a considerable saving if you're doing that day in, day out for the whole year. This is how I typically like to break down my chicken. So I'll take the breast down right from the top and go all the way down. Just follow around the rib cage, flip it round, and then you can go right down and cut through this bone here. Flip her over, break the bones by pressing them in, and then go all the way around. Take out the oyster, all the way down the bottom. Same on the other side, all the way down the bottom. To debone the chicken legs, take your knife down each side of the bone, like so. Really easy, just working your knife around the bone. Pull it out the other way. Take it off at the joint. The other bone, down we go. Like so. Peel that bone upwards. Should come out completely clean. This bit here goes to stock. And then equally as well, we're not going to be using the chicken skin for the other recipes, or it just goes really well and nicely into the stocks. Boneless thigh with leg. Boneless thigh with leg. Chicken wing with a drum. Chicken wing with a drum. Again, if you want to, you can freeze those down, and you've got that as a nice little bonus. Once you've saved them up, you can do a little wing night. One beautiful fillet. Two beautiful fillet. And then this is gold dust. All of this stuff just goes into stock. Our leftover, which is going to be stock, which we can use for multiple meals throughout the week. Drums and thighs, which is going to be a banging butter chicken. We've got our fillets, which we're going to do a Kiev with. Okay, so to make a classic Kiev, which is one of my favorites, we don't need the skin, just going to remove that. This we can whack into the stock for later. A really nice fine incision down the top of the breast, and then open it out slightly, and then just lightly go in, and you're almost like butterflying internally, so like inside the fillet, if you like. What you don't want to do is go through all the way, because then you'll basically go down into the bottom of the fillet. But you want to leave a nice big opening. This technique is what I learned from watching Adam Buyout. Just place a good hit of garlic butter inside, just parsley, garlic and softened butter. Soften it, so just let it get to room temperature, and then mix in some chopped garlic, a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, and your seasonings. The garlic is raw because it's going to cook inside this chicken breast. Our little pane setup. Little tip with a panko, give it a really good mix with your hands first. Starts to break down the layers. You'll get a better adhesion on the first dredge. Flour. Egg. Breadcrumb. Now just to seal it for sure, back into the egg, back into the breadcrumb. So to get a nice shape, we'll just place this into cling film. Just let it set. Just let it chill out in the fridge for an hour. That a panko will set around it and form a nice crust. You won't get a load of melted butter coming out of it. So these have been in the fridge now in their cling film. I've just taken them out of the cling film, and then I'm just going to lay them into the pan. Good amount of oil. So our Kievs have been roasted in the pan, and now they'll just whack them in the oven, 180 degrees for about 14 minutes. So these have been in for about 8 minutes now. I'm not going to probe them yet because I definitely know they're not right. So it's going to be at least 14 minutes in total, so I'll just whack them back in now. So chicken Kiev, bit of lemon mayonnaise for freshness, potatoes, and a little bit of chicken sauce. This is just our chicken stock from all of our bones. A nice light chicken sauce. Chicken Kiev, nothing better. So this is chicken waste, chicken stock. Got our carcasses in there, got the skin, all the bones, all into the pot. Cover your bones with water, and then just do enough just to cover all of them. And then I've got some vegetables. You can use really any veg you want. I've got a little bit of old fennel that I had in the fridge, carrots and onions. So this is very much a stock that I would make at home, not like a restaurant quality stock on our last video, but if you want to check that out, the link will be on the video right now. But basically it can go for turn it on and cook it for about an hour and a half, and then it'll be ready to use. Everything from making sure your chicken casserole is delicious. If you've got some extra, we're going to use that in our curry. We're also going to use it to make a really beautiful fragrant pilau rice. That's what I'm going to show you how to make next. So our chicken stock's had 2.5 hours, so we're just going to pass it off. And then I would just leave that in my fridge and take it out whenever I needed it. Perfect. So this is my ultimate pilau rice recipe. Something I use a lot at home because my kids love rice. I've got some shallots, which have been, or onions, which have been just sweating down. This is a little bit of oil. And I've got cumin seeds in there, some green cardamom pods, 1 bay leaf, and a little bit of turmeric. I always just add in a little bit of ground coriander at the end. Good hit of butter, use a good quality stock. Use a nice long grain rice and make sure it's really well washed. Allow it the right amount of time to sort of rest at the end. The recipe for this rice is, which is honestly my favorite pilau rice, it's just in the description so you can follow it. A kilo of rice, kilo of stock, the oil and cumin seeds, not too much on the cumin seeds because it's very strong flavour. Toasting rice just releases some of the fragrance, but also it breaks down the outside layer of the rice and it helps it absorb a bit of stock. So it's always a step that I never skip. You can use ghee to make your pilau, that's more traditional, but I actually just use French butter. And then just a little bit of salt, and then we'll put it down onto a low heat, and then we'll add a lid on top and just let it do its thing. 25 minutes with the lid on, don't take the lid off. Check it after 25 minutes, lightly fluff, lid back on to let it steam out. A butter chicken, my absolute favorite. These are all the thighs and legs that we got from our chicken. So we're just gonna add them into a bowl, 1.5 tablespoons of yogurt, tablespoon of Kashmiri chili. Kashmiri chili is really important because it gives it the red color. It's not that hot, like it's not hot. Tablespoon of turmeric, the mother of all spices, spice blend, is garam masala. About a teaspoon of garam masala, the juice of a whole lemon, and add some fenugreek powder in as well. And then we're going to actually just marinate it on the skewers. I'm going to cook this over a grill. If you're doing this at home, you could just cook these under your grill at home. It'll have exactly the same impact, but our grill at the restaurant just gives it a little bit of a smoky flavour. It tastes a bit more like a tandoor. They need to marinate for at least 4 hours, but the longer you leave them, ideally overnight, you get more of a delicious flavour, and the yogurt is going to tenderise the chicken thigh a little bit more. Okay, so add a good amount of butter into the pan, onions go in, and then the key to a butter chicken is just sweating these onions down nicely. Add in some salt, just roughly chop up your green chilli. For some curries, it asks you to devein the tomatoes. I've never ever done that for my butter chicken because we put it through the blender. So it's a really nice smooth base, and that comes from being hand blended. The onions should be nicely sweating down. And as soon as they go a light golden colour, then we're going to start adding in the rest of our ingredients. Okay, so our pilau now has been cooking for 25 minutes. The water's all evaporated, and I've just added a couple of knobs of butter. And I'm just going to leave the lid off now for it to steam out. We're now going to add in our spices. So, teaspoon of garam masala, tablespoon of Kashmiri chili, teaspoon of turmeric, about a teaspoon of cumin seeds, some whole coriander seeds, and some fenugreek. Cook those spices out for a second. Your ginger and garlic mix, which has just been minced in a blender. Basically a tablespoon of each. And then before anything starts to caramelize, add in your tomatoes and your tomato paste. About 2 tablespoons of tomato puree. If it's looking a little bit dark on the bottom, just add a tiny bit of your stock now. Use that stock to clean the bottom of the pan. And then once all that's cooked out and you've got a nice clean base of your pan, add in a bit of chicken stock, splash of cream, and allow that to cook out for at least 35 to 45 minutes. Really gentle heat. All right, so our butter chicken's been simmering away now for about 35 minutes. So just finish it with a couple of cubes of butter. A lot of the base curries. This is, to be honest, this is a really just like simple curry sauce recipe that can be adapted in lots of different ways. Got my grilled chicken here that was just grilled this lightly for about 5 minutes until it's got really nice colour. It's so much better to cook your chicken separately, either in the oven under the grill, or as I've done on my charcoal grill. And it just like completely changes the and levels up the flavour. I've only used 4 or 5 ladles full. You can easily save this another midweek meal or 2 in your freezer in a Tupperware. Just really nice separation on those grains. Really good dish, doesn't take too long to come together, and you'd have stock and rice left over for a while. Turn this into a biryani the next day. Next up, pork belly. So these bits of pork belly cost £5.50 and it's 500 grams of meat. This bad boy cost me 63 quid and it's 7.5 kilos worth of meat. For a 200 gram serving, it's about £2.20. From this, it's about £1.50. I'm going to show you how to prep it. So pork belly is really easy. You get lots of different sort of trim off there, which you can use for all sorts. Here is what we take off first, and it's essentially the skirt. We have this rib cage, and this is our rack of ribs. Really easy to remove. Work your knife along those bones. So So yeah, I think like even when I was a lot younger, pork belly wasn't like this really widely consumed meat. There's a lot of other cultures where the pork belly is almost their like primary source of meat. In Korea, it's incredibly popular. A very fatty cut, which means they didn't have a massive amount of popularity. I just take these little bits of bone out as well, and then once you get through this bone, you just remove these. Somewhere in between a bone and a cartilage, these little bones. This would just be underneath the rib cage, so you just take them out like this. They're super easy to take out, and then you just rub your fingers, make sure there's no loose bone, and then that's it. I mean, the rest is 100% meat. Cut it into nice large strips. It's not a difficult process, but it does take a little bit of time. Okay, so this could all be for roast pork. So this is beautiful pork meat with a good mixture of fat, and this is going to be our pork curry. We're just going between the muscles, so it's actually really easy. Opening it up like a book. This could be a porchetta roll. Open it up, lots of seasoning, and then roll it nice and tight. Porchetta style joint. If you want to learn how to cook and tie this, perfect for a Sunday roast, there's a video here. Here's you got baby wrap ribs. We've got 3 Hong Kong style pork bellies, and then this is everything that you're going to need to make a midweek meal. But look how much liquid and water is in this meat. Definitely lower welfare pork. It's got no substance to it. We inject this meat with water, whereas this is dry. It's got a really good layer of fat on the bottom and on the top. Pork's one of the ones that escapes a lot of criticism in terms of the welfare stuff. Not that we should be mean to any animals, but like pigs are pretty fucking clever. This is proper garbage. So this is our premium dish, and I'm going to show you pretty much my favorite way to cook pork belly now. It's like a Hong Kong style roast pork. You just need to make a load of little pinpricks. Okay, so once you've pricked it all over, submerge it into some boiling water, and we'll cook it in there for about a minute. When we come to dry it, it'll mean that the outside can get super crispy and the inside stays really nice and moist. So that's at a minute now. Goes straight into the ice. So the next stage after this is just to make the dry rub. Salt goes in. Kilo of salt would probably do the entirety of that pork belly. So you can make this in a big batch. Got ground pepper and Chinese 5-spice, about 250 grams of each. Give that a nice mix to combine, and then lay that on a tray and then cover with that spice mix all over. Set that in the fridge for 6 hours so that it can finish curing. So after 6 hours, you can see all of the liquids come out onto the tray, and then what we're going to do is just rinse this. It's a lot firmer to touch, so we're going to rinse all of that off for about 10 minutes under cold running water. Okay, so once you've done that relatively simple process, place it onto a tray and then let it dry for at least 24 hours. It's going to finish curing, the skin's going to really nicely dry out, and then it'll be ready to crisp up and roast. After 24 hours, you'll be able to see the meat's a lot more rigid, and then the skin is very dry. It's completely changed colour, and this is ready now to be roasted. Put the tin foil on either side to protect the meat. We salt the top. So you can use Maldon salt or fine salt for this. 180 degrees for an hour. Then we take the salt off and finish it for the last 10. It's been about an hour and 10. What I like to do is just get a knife and just tap. And then scrape it all down. And now it goes on for the last 10 minutes without any salt on, just to get it ultra crispy. These are shiso leaves. If you can't find them, you can just use a different type of lettuce leaf. Samjang, which is a Korean soy paste, fermented soy paste and chili. Spring onion. Toasted sesame. So that's our little spring onion salad for the top. So juicy and so crispy at the same time. Screw it, I'm going out. This is the best way to cook pork belly. And then I just lay this on the plate and serve it with some Korean short grain rice. Boom! One of these beautiful pieces of pork. A little bit more samjang on top. Genuinely, if you don't cook any of the other dishes today, this is one you can't skip. Absolute banger. This is an absolutely banging midweek meal. Sri Lankan black curry. And pork belly is perfect for this because it's got lots of natural fat running through it, which is going to render down and help make the sauce. I'm just going to dice it up. We start off by marinating our pork. So first ingredient for the pork marinade, 2 tablespoons of tamarind. Slightly differently to other curries, we use vinegar. The vinegar and the acid in there helps to break down the meat. Got a little bit of ginger and garlic that goes into the vinegar. Got a teaspoon of turmeric, teaspoon of Kashmiri chili powder, a nice big fat tablespoon, loaded tablespoon of black pepper, good pinch of salt. So this sits ideally for overnight, but absolutely fine if it sits for about 4 hours. Sort of quite wet marinade. Okay, so the base of most Sri Lankan food is starts with coconut oil, and it adds a different fragrance to the curries. I've got 1 whole red onion here. That goes in first, and then just lightly sweat that off. And then the secret ingredient to this curry is actually this curry powder, which we actually blacken. So this is, we're actually just using a Madras curry powder, but they have a slightly different blend. And you cook that until it's really well toasted and super dark. And then keep moving this around. 1 whole lemongrass that's been sort of finely chopped. Then we add in these chilies, and what we've done with them is just cut them in half. We've left the stem on. Some green cardamom, and we're just going to toast off that all together. Our curry powder is blackening off really nicely now. Add in some toasted spice, Kashmiri, chili powder, teaspoon of turmeric, more black pepper, really good amount of ginger and garlic. 2 heaped tablespoons of ginger and garlic. Add in our meat. Add in some curry leaves, and this is a sort of like signature flavor from Sri Lanka, pandan leaves. Super toasted. That's been toasted now for about 8 to 10 minutes, a few tablespoons. Top up with water. And then this is now going to cook down about an hour and a half. And it's really beautifully cooked down. The pork is so tender. And then to finish the curry, you just add a really good hit of lime juice. You can pick the chilies out if you don't want the extra heat. I personally like the extra heat. People always struggle with a pork curry, but this is probably the most classic one, and classic for a reason. It's delicious. That's actually so banging. Okay, so we've got some leftover pork. This is the pork belly that's been roasted that we used for our dinner party. So we've just cooked these little pork ribs, which came off the back of the belly, 140 degrees for about 6 hours, and they're super soft. Covered them in chicken stock, and then it reduced right down in the pan. And then we've just got some garlic, spring onions, a little bit of kimchi. Korean short grain rice is so good for fried rice. Do some nice cuts of pork. That is a little bit of kimchi. Yeah, 1 little garlic clove. Spring onions. Okay, so for the fried rice, a little bit of veg oil in the pan. So nice little cubes of pork. A little bit of toasted sesame oil. So these are our ribs. So these have just cooked until they've got a nice golden crust on them. I've just mixed honey, sriracha, toasted sesame seeds, and that just goes on top just to glaze it all up. It's our Fallow sriracha. It's the best goddamn hot sauce in the world. You Brooklyn Beckham. Okay, so once our pork is super crispy like this, get some kimchi, drain off a little bit of the juice, roughly chop. Kimchi goes in, then the rice. Keep the heat really high. Obviously, if you've got a wok at home, it'd be way better. But I'm just showing you how to do it, so just do it in a conventional pan. My friend again. Just adds a little bit of heat and acidity. Spring onion. Banger of a fried rice. It'd be impossible to do a leftover segment without talking about fried rice, because it is the ultimate way to use up any sort of leftovers. If you're like a real loser like me, you wouldn't be able to get any friends to come to your special occasion anyway, and then you could just come and have this the day after. So 2 meals, 2 lonely meals on your own. Because we got that belly, we've got all these beautiful ribs as well. Oh, something about short grain Korean rice as well. Watery, sad, miserable pork, or a beautiful aged pork belly. It's cheaper, it's more effective, and you're learning new skills. Choose life.